Are you guys hiring, Arkady?
Yeah, we have two open positions. One open rank tenure track position in technology strategy, and one non-tenure track position in entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. Where do I apply?
I think that the deadline.
We're right here, Luis. We're right here. We can
Oh
hear
no, they can hear me. Oh no, I'm busted.
Well, welcome back to the seminar, everybody. So our special guest for today, our celebrity talk show guest, is Arkadiy Sakhartov. Arkady serves as associate professor at the Guy's College of Business at University of Illinois. He is an alumni of our PhD program here at Krannert, graduating in 2012. He previously served on the faculty at Wharton before joining University of Illinois. He is the academic co-director of the HERFT Technology and Management Program. He is an expert in resource redeployment and corporate strategy. I think it would be fair to call Arkady the king of resource redeployment. You know, anything having to do with resource redeployment, if you submit a paper on that topic, it probably will be reviewed by Arkady. You know, at least on the theory side, he seems to be dominating the conversation in the strategy field on resource redeployment. He's very well published. Has numerous publications in SMJ and Org Science. His research is really starting to get some traction in citations. I noticed that on Google Scholar, he was experiencing 25% year-over-year growth in citations for the last several years. So everybody, please join me in welcoming back Arkadiy Sakhartov to Krannert.
Yeah, thank you very much for this generous, kind introduction, Rich.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so thank you for joining us. And you know, I'm sure you know from watching some of my videos that I love to start these interviews off by asking people about their path toward becoming a strategy professor. It is kind of an odd profession in the sense that I've never heard a 10-year-old say, "Mommy, I want to be a strategy professor when I grow up." You know, I did notice that you spent 10 years as a finance director for two different companies in Russia before starting on your PhD. So I assume there must be some indirect pathway that you took to our profession. So tell us a little bit about what made you want to become a strategy professor in the first place.
Thank you for this question, Rich, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this course seminar. This is an absolute pleasure for me to come back to the alma mater. Yeah, my path is not a regular path towards, well, we have all unique paths for entering this profession. I got inspired while being an executive. I had worked as a finance director and a board member in a diversified mid-sized group of companies back in Russia for nearly 8 years. And before that, I was also involved in executive positions. So I worked on resource allocation, including resource redeployment. I worked on the strategy of participating in multiple businesses, starting new businesses and exiting the previously entered businesses in the diversified group of companies. And I encountered a lot of interesting, intriguing, thought-stimulating questions to which I strive to get an optimal, the best response, and I couldn't. So I felt that I need to know more about this. And I started reading academic literature, starting with books like with classics, Peter Drucker, Henry Mintzberg, then gradually coming to the reading of academic articles. And because I was a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer, a natural first step for me in this iteration was to start reading academic literature in finance, then in economics. Then I started reading management literature and more specifically strategic management literature. And each of these areas appeared exciting to me. I found pieces of answers to my questions in each of them. And I still was in the position of asking more questions. But the comparison of all these sources quite quickly led me to the understanding which area I like most. And it turns out that was strategy, because it was an integrated area, the most juicy area, offering the richness of complex decisions which I encountered as an executive. So this has become my choice. And I didn't know at that time that I would be admitted to the program, which is actually the birthplace for research in strategic management, to the Kraner School of Management, where the first PhD specialization in strategic management was offered. So I was lucky to be admitted to the program here.
So you were actually motivated by research questions that came up from your work outside of academia, and that is true for some people I know in the field, like Russ Koff, had that interest in human capital valuation from his consulting days, and so that motivated him to want to study that. And so you also found that you were not satisfied with the answers that you were getting about why these companies were allocating and reallocating resources the way they were, I guess.
Yeah, I had to find solutions. Like we were debating over how to allocate resources more optimally, how to structure our multi-business organization, how to incentivize business units, how to make them coordinate with each other, but at the same time not to interfere with their discretion excessively. And it turns out that all these questions somehow are considered in different areas of strategic management. This draw my attention.
Nice. So tell us a little bit more about the challenges that you faced actually as a finance director at these companies that brought this to your attention.
Yeah,
were there particular problems or puzzles that you were facing that made you really grabbed your attention on this and motivated you?
Yeah, one puzzle which currently is a ground for my ongoing investigation, and which was one of the motivation for going into PhD, was how you manage units in a multi-business firm while maintaining their interest to make progress and make profits in these individual units, but at the same time, not at the expense of the overall profits of the company. When there is need for cooperation, for reallocation and sharing of resources. So you motivate units to be excellent in their individual businesses, but in this case, they don't want to cooperate. They become parochial, very concentrated on their individual agendas. So that is a very interesting and intriguing question, for which I think that even as academics, we are still to find good responses. We are working in this direction. I know a lot of publications, great publications in this direction, but there is still a lot of room to dig into this issue.
Okay. So you were interested in studying these things in an academic environment. And so you applied to PhD programs. Why do you think you wound up at Kraner specifically at Purdue?
Yeah, I don't know how it worked on the side of Kraner. I can only conjecture. I think that I can better characterize this selection on my side, which probably will somehow converge to the logic which unfolded here at Kraner. My first degree was in mechanical engineering, which kind of influenced my tendency to be a conceptual thinker. So I wanted to do modeling And I think that I am pretty much econ-oriented as a former chief financial officer. So I kind of embrace the assumption of rationality in its reasonable form. It turns out that strategic management program at Kraner School of Management of Purdue University historically was econ-minded. So in fact, when I joined the program, I was by default signed to minor in econ. No one asked me whether I want, but I was signed to minor in econ, which I did not mind. But it turns out that was a match. So I think that was probably noticed. My preferences were expressed in my statement of purpose and were noticed by the recruitment committee for PhD students here at Kraner, and I'm glad that it worked out this way.
Yeah, so I would imagine that, doctoral programs evaluating a statement of purpose like that back then. So this would have been, let me think, this would have been about 2006 or something like that, or 2007.
Yeah.
Looking at a statement of purpose from a PhD applicant that said, hey, I really want to do formal modeling in strategy. I imagine that at that time, at least, it would have been, some of those admissions committees might have been puzzled by that, or might have been, challenged by that, because there really just weren't too many people doing that kind of work in strategy at that time.
Yeah, I don't think that it helped my marketability. I applied to multiple programs, probably 10 to 15. I got 2 invitations. I very quickly understood that Kraner Purdue suits my agenda very well. I was determined. I am very glad that it worked this way, because otherwise, if I were had been admitted to the place where the type of my preference, which I had, were not met, but somehow I ended up in a program where what I want to do is not welcome, then it would be probably miserable to me. But I'm very glad that Kraner was very enabling in this regard and helped me in very many ways to pursue what I really wanted to pursue.
So tell us a little bit about what your first couple of years were like at Kraner as a incoming doctoral student for the first few years.
Yeah, I thought that I had worked hard when I was a corporate executive, but it turns out that I overestimated the hardness of that previous employment. When I became a first-year PhD student, I very quickly got addicted to Starbucks coffee here in Memorial Union. And I worked in the first year, literally 14 hours per day, counting on Sunday and Saturday. So I had 2 small children when we moved to the US. One was 2, another was 4. And in my first 2 years in the PhD, I barely saw them not sleeping. When I was leaving Purdue Village, where we lived in the family residences, it was between 6 to 7 a.m. They were still in bed sleeping, and I was returning between 11 and 12 p.m.
Right.
And they were already in bed. So that was a very intense study. But I think that it was very well structured, very rational. I had a very nice sequence of courses, which became really instrumental to the formation of my profile as a researcher. Very intense 2 years, and then even without coursework, the subsequent 2 years were intense in other ways. So I didn't have to take courses, but there was the need to produce already some research output to get something under R&R and eventually conditionally accepted. So I think that I recall my 4 years overall, and especially the first 2 years, as incredibly intense here.
So it sounds like the field of strategy owes your wife a thank you.
Absolutely.
For supporting you so thoroughly, so that you could devote that time during those years. It sounded like you maybe saw your kids on the weekends, maybe. I see that some of our doctoral students' heads were exploding as you described your first year experience, and I see Jing is laughing now.
Yeah, that would be absolutely impossible without support and this collaboration and love from my family. My wife has been always very supportive. That was an investment for her, a big investment of time and effort. She let me do my PhD by focusing on other family issues. That was kind of
right, right. So I'll personally give my thanks to her for doing that. So then after that, you moved into kind of the dissertation phase, and so it sounds like you had a rough idea of what you wanted to study before you even arrived at Granite, in terms of, you knew you wanted to do some formal modeling of resource redeployment and corporate level strategy issues. And so I think, one thing that sometimes students will struggle with is they may know, like yourself, they may know a topic that they want to study, and they may even know a method that they want to use to study it, right? Like you did, corporate strategy, resource redeployment, formal modeling, right? But that's not a research question. And so it's often doctoral students find it challenging to get from, I know what my topic is, to what is my question. Do you have any wisdom or guidance or experience? Maybe experience is the better word. Do you have any experience that you can share about what that journey was like for you, moving from a topic to a specific research question?
Yeah, definitely, Rich. This is a great question. I indeed had some general direction in terms of resource allocation and corporate strategy, and I had a strong preference for doing formal modeling. But this was all in the shape which needed to be made sharper and more focused and more rational. I owe a lot to my advisor and dissertation chair, Professor Tim Fulton. He helped me articulate my interests, and he helped me find what not only is interesting to me, but relevant to others. Also, that was very helpful that team focuses on real options research.
Right.
And my other committee members played a very active role in forming my interest at the stage of working on the proposal and subsequently working on the dissertation itself. Professors Marvin Lieberman, Jeff Reuer, and Tom Brash played a big role in the formation of my agenda. And in addition to this, I think that a lot of inspiration and direction was drawn from the seminars which I had with Professor Tom Brash. My very first seminar in the PhD, starting in the first week of being here, was on theories in strategic management, which was very instrumental. I received a map of theories in the area where I want to make theory. And the second seminar with Professor Tom Brash was on corporate strategy, so directly in the area of my interest in my second year in the PhD. And that was very helpful in understanding different directions and ramifications of research in this broad, big area. So all this was shaped and made more focused by my committee members, and that was in the first place by the chair of my dissertation, by Tim Fulton.
Right. So you mentioned your committee members, Tim, Tom, Jeff, and Marvin. And I know from our other conversations that that your dissertation committee wasn't always happy with you, right? So maybe tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in defining your dissertation with the committee.
Yeah, in a way, I was very inflexible and stubborn in terms of what kind of research I wanted to do. It may have advantages and disadvantages. I wanted to do conceptual modeling. I wanted to do theory development, and more specifically, I wanted to develop theory in a formal way, using formal modeling. Worse than that was that I wanted to be concentrated only on that. So I wanted to make this my distinctive feature, my specialization. That was received very well in general that I want to do formal modeling and theory building, but the fact that I want to be over-centered on that, and the fact that I was given to have a dissertation without a single empirical chapter was very unusual for our field.
Very unusual, yes.
And this is not that my advisors didn't wish me well. In fact, they did. They wished me well on the market. They knew that with such a narrow profile, with such a specialization, I would have hard time on the market. And I did. When I was interviewed, already been in the job market, some people suggested that my profile would probably better fit an econ faculty or even an engineering faculty rather than a management faculty. So, but eventually it turned out well. But this was challenging to kind of to push this agenda and to justify why I want to specialize in this specific direction.
Right. I mean, I think many doctoral students in our field are discouraged from doing any theory development at all. You know, they can be told that, you know, theory development is something you should do after you're tenured, and, you know, when you have, you know, when you've comfortably proven yourself. You know, and so, you know, it's unusual to see a dissertation with more than, let's say, more than one theory chapter in it. But like you said, your dissertation was all theory, was all formal modeling, no empirics. And that's very unusual. In fact, I've not really heard of any other cases of that. Maybe I'm missing some, but and as you said, it's perhaps a challenge for you on the job market, because I think the normal expectation in our field is that a job talk, at least a rookie job talk, and a rookie job market paper should be an empirical paper. At least that's kind of the conventional wisdom or the norms. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, obviously you managed to succeed. So how did you overcome that challenge? How did you overcome that, you know, kind of conventional wisdom in the field to actually succeed on the job market?
Well, there is always an element of luck, I think. At least when we cannot explain something, we appeal to this element. So I guess that somehow by luck, my application was noted at Wharton, the place which is known for theoretical work, and the place where the work of theorists, including formal theorists like Nikolai Sigilkov and Dan Leventhal, had inspired me and actually had drawn my attention to the area of strategic management. So those were first NK models which made me think, oh, I think that this is very interesting and this is what I can and probably want to do. So when I was invited to present my research at Wharton, you know, from the very beginning, starting talking to faculty there, I felt myself cold. This is not that I got relaxed, like feeling, oh, this is the deal, right? No, this was not the case, absolutely. This was really challenging. But I felt myself very comfortable and I had very interesting, thought-stimulating discussions during my campus visit, during my job talk. I still remember the comments which different committee members in the management department of Wharton made. So I think that because I got lucky and was invited to give a talk at Wharton, I got a chance to explain myself and to talk to people who have made similar efforts, similar commitments in trying to advance theory by either qualitative means or moreover even by modeling quantitatively. So I think that that would probably not happen without luck, but there was an element of being able to talk and to discuss the overlaps in interests.
Interesting. So what were the biggest challenges that you faced in executing this dissertation, this unusual dissertation project that was, you know, a set of formal models on resource allocation in at corporate level strategy? What were the biggest challenges that you faced in doing this dissertation?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I think that I came to the field of academic research uninformed and ignorant of specific of doing this business. So when I was entering, I thought, okay, it looks like I can do modeling, and this will probably have a positive impact on my career. I think that I overestimated the contribution of the model itself, but underestimated how you sell the model to your colleagues
Yes.
by writing a paper, by presenting that at conferences, and by eventually publishing. So I overemphasized the technical background where I was prepared pretty well, and I started modeling very soon in the PhD. But writing in English, in a foreign language,
Yes.
and moreover, academically writing, this
Yes.
was absolutely unfamiliar area for me. And this is where Team Folter was incredibly helpful in channeling me, demanding on me, and kind of teaching me how to do that efficiently and effectively. So the mistake was to underestimate the importance of how you wrap your model and sell your model. Now I know sometimes creating a model may take a day, but writing may take a year, sometimes even more. So it is much more difficult to explain your model, to present, to make this credible, and to make people read that, cite that, and use that in subsequent research. This is what I continue to learn. I am far from being an expert there. I continue to learn how to do that. I think that I am gradually improving, but there is still a lot to learn.
So you had your mistake, you're saying, was to emphasize product over packaging.
Exactly.
When
Yeah.
packaging was really important too. And I agree. I think, especially since most people in our field are not formal modelers, packaging it in a way that appeals to an audience, a non-technical audience, is important. And it does require a certain set of skills. So those were skills that you had to develop, and Tim, as you say, gave you a good mentorship, I guess is the right term, or
yeah, that is the right term.
Yeah, in how to package formal models. What advice did he give you in terms of um, this apprenticeship in packaging formal models? What insights did he share?
Yeah, I think this is another very suitable word which we use, apprenticeship, because our first writing was that we were sitting next to each other in his office and writing together, and he would highlight the high demands on the structure, the high demands on the language, on not making this cumbersome, making this smooth, logical, efficient in terms of the structure. The very important role which is played by the first section, the introduction, and specifically the first page in the paper. So we were just sitting next to each other for days, months, and I was just observing as this skill transferred as some kind of tacit knowledge, something which sometimes may be articulated clearly, but in other ways you can learn that by observing how the craft goes, how this art is created. And I think that team was very generous in this regard. He shared this with me. And this definitely had a lot of impact on how I try to publish now.
Well, let me shift gears and maybe ask you some more forward-looking questions. As I said at the beginning, you're kind of the king of research, and especially theory on resource-free deployment. So what are the most important unanswered questions on the topic of resource-free deployment? What do we not know about resource redeployment that we really ought to know?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge, even though I am a theorist, I will now say something which is probably strange for my profile. The biggest challenge in studying resource redeployment is the difficulty to capture resource redeployment empirically. On the one hand, resource redeployment is the activity which is not required to be reported. For example, you will not find a credible record of resource redeployment in CompuStat segments, even
Right.
though I know many colleagues have tried this. But this is very questionable whether what is captured is resource redeployment or something else similar to it. On the other hand, resource redeployment is a very intimate strategy, which I guess as a former executive, corporate executives are unwilling to share if not demanded by the law. So they probably don't want to share those intricate strategies with rivals, with other stakeholders. There have been very few studies which reliably diagnosed resource redeployment for this reason. So I think this is very important. And as a former executive, I can tell you that resource redeployment is prevalently used as a strategy. I did use resource redeployment and I was involved in redeployments. And it is a value creating or sometimes value distracting strategy. So I think that we need to find a better way to capture that, either by using qualitative research case methods, or maybe by using surveys, or finding new data, industry-specific data, which would inform us better than CompuStat can about the use of resource redeployment in firms. And it has relationship to canonical questions. The most important canonical question, which is related to the use of resource redeployment in multi-business firms, is why such firms exist in the first place, why firms diversify into multiple businesses along the geographic dimension, on product market dimension. So this is a very important fundamental question. And moreover, from time to time, we hear about the disadvantages of conglomerates, failures of corporate acquisitions, failures of diversification. But diversified firms are prevalent. Pick the first 10 in Fortune 500. And all these firms will be multi-business in one way or another. So this means that probably we are still not in the position to carefully fully explain why they diversify. If there are some doubts in this regard, resource redeployment is one of the important mechanisms which is used in multi-business firms. And again, we don't know how to currently credibly measure that empirically. We probably should.
Right. So you mentioned the lack of good data on resource redeployment within companies. I wonder if, I'm just trying to think of, perhaps specific categories of resources where you might have a little bit better data, like, redeployment of human capital, for example. You might be able to track somebody's career trajectory through different divisions of a company or something like that. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that. Is there potential for strategic human capital redeployment literature?
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to do that, probably because I'm not empiricist. I left that at a very embryonic stage, but I used that in one of my projects on the dynamics of corporate diversification. One of the implicit arguments in that publication is that we can explain the existence of unrelatedly diversified firms, which are named conglomerates and are blamed as value destroying firms sometimes. So I took some conglomerates, prominent companies, which are unrelatedly diversified, but meanwhile have existed for ages, for centuries, even though they are frequently named dinosaurs and kind of creatures not having much hope to survive. So I took their profiles and I started going through the careers of executives, corporate executives, business unit leaders, and I clearly saw their trajectories, moves across different divisions in the company. So those top executives, top managers, they are redeployed. I know that in a related area, sometimes this is named employee mobility. So we need to figure out what was the move from the side of the company and what was done voluntarily by those executives.
Right. Right.
Most of the time, it's a combination of the two, but at least this is one of the possible directions to track the redeployment of human resources across divisions and firms.
Right, that is true, right? So you do raise a point that maybe my idea is not such a great idea because of the endogeneity problem of the resources. Human resources don't deploy unless they want to redeploy, right?
Yeah.
You can't just kind of arbitrarily redeploy them. They have to cooperate in the redeployment.
This is just a challenge. It can be worked with. I think that we have a lot of experts in how to solve endogeneity. So I guess that someone would be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, I would think that, for example, maybe data on mutual fund managers, where it's very public, who are the managers of different mutual funds, and fund families can have dozens, if not hundreds, of different mutual funds that are in their portfolio where managers could move between. So there may be some possibility to study it there. So tell us a little bit about how you moved from the dissertation research that you were doing to your current research. How have your interests changed over time, and how is that reflected in the research that you're doing today?
Yeah, I don't remember, unfortunately, who was that in my PhD program. Apparently, that was mentioned by a few people, not by a single one. But someone recommended me that I write any ideas, however silly they may appear initially, and file them. And I did. From the first week in the PhD, I started writing down ideas. And you know what? Some of these ideas have already been published, and other ideas are something on which I currently work. This was one of the sources. In addition to my managerial career, in addition to my experience as a CFO, I started generating ideas in my PhD. How did I do that? I read a lot, of course, as a PhD student, and I attended talks and conferences. And whenever I read something new or heard something new, I would think about how this relates to my interests. Back at Purdue, then at Wharton, now at Illinois. So I listen to the talk and think how it relates to my interests. And sometimes somewhere at the intersection, I find an opportunity for future research. Also, recently, I have become more actively involved in co-authorship. And this is an amazing new area which reopened to me after I started working with my advisor, with Tim Holt, and now it reopened to me with new co-authorships. And it leads to ideas which I wouldn't be able to generate on my own. So this combination of my interest with interests of someone who does a related but not redundant type of research. And wow, somewhere at the intersection, something new emerges. And this new becomes interesting to both sides. Sometimes it happens iteratively, like first few trials may be something which is not interesting to one party or to another party, and eventually it works. And something emerged which is of interest to both or to three co-authors, and it starts developing.
So can you give us an example or two of some projects or topics, at least, that emerged from in this way?
Yeah, for example, a few projects emerged in this way with Jeff Rewer, and one project which I currently do on corporate structure as it relates to research redeployment is together with Koenig Halford. So with Jeff Rewer, who is known for his research on information economics and mergers and acquisitions, my work on research redeployment, I think, combined pretty well, because we started exploring specific informational problems which may be associated with redeployment. And we recently published a NORC Science paper, which lies exactly at the intersection of our interests. It is dedicated to due diligence and corporate acquisitions.
Right.
Currently, we work on a new project. We still don't have a paper, but it is very intriguing and promising. I developed a model predicting the use of the option to idle the production and subsequently redeploy resources to a better use. And Jeff introduced me to Toby Lee, who has the data on the idling and redeployment of rigs in the oil drilling industry in Texas. And we quickly ran some preliminary estimations, And it turns out that the results of these estimations are consistent with the results of the formally developed model. So this is the kind of a collaboration where I am less experienced and less excited to do empirical work on my own, but there is a partner who has the data and is an expert in empirical estimations, and all of a sudden they match to each other. These results, empirical results, match to the theoretical predictions. With Connie help, but we work on the project on the use of different corporate structures to facilitate research redeployment. And of course, I have been very much influenced by your article published in 2004 in co-authorship with Casey Eisenhardt on the intertemporal economies of scope, which are related or even are the same as research redeployment. So, and part of this article is concerned with the structure used by Omni Corporation described in this article. So when I started working, we started discussing this project with Connie, and we very soon understood the substantial overlaps in our interests. Now we work on this project, and Connie helps me a lot in terms of how to make this formal modeling more understandable and wrappable to the broader audience, so that it may have a bigger impact on people who do not necessarily want to pursue modeling by themselves or to invest a lot of effort in understanding the subtleties of the model, how to describe this in an understandable way. So this is another kind of synergy which emerges and helps develop the project.
It's great how those things work out sometimes, you know. It's so easy to get kind of discouraged when projects don't work. We have to kind of enjoy the successes when they do occur. So I know that you've been very involved in doctoral education, you know, mentoring students and also teaching doctoral seminars. So what is the most important piece of advice that you give to your own doctoral students?
Yeah, I think that I have always wanted to work with doctoral students, and I think that I was very pleased when at Illinois I was asked to do a separate prep, a PhD seminar for doctoral students on corporate strategy, and more specifically, I was allowed to make this focused on formal modeling in corporate strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with regard to this specific seminar, I think that I am trying to let students know that formal modeling is not rocket science. It's complicated, tedious, but it's doable. And it doesn't require a very sophisticated background. At least some types of modeling are much easier than people perceive them when they see Greeks on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of paper and pencil exercises where students do discoveries by themselves after initial preparation about how to work through the model. After training, they do that and they make the discoveries. But speaking more generally about advice to doctoral students, I think that this is probably also what I heard while being a PhD student. I think that this is very important, to be curious and inspired. And initially search very broad for topics which are interesting to you, but meanwhile, which are relevant to others. After you go through this stage, or maybe somewhere in the process of doing these things, you have to start being efficient. Uh, After you select a few topics uh, which are interesting to you and relevant to others, narrow the set even down to work on a very few topics and work hard every day and make progress every day on these topics. And third, you know, this is an interesting occupation where you have to be simultaneously at once flexible and persistent.
Mm-hmm.
So in the course of work, each PhD student, junior faculty will receive numerous, very valuable feedback from his or her dear colleagues. This is natural and very important to make most use of this feedback. But this is also important not to lose the direction for what you intend to do. So this is important to be flexible to accommodate recommendations and feedback, but also to stay your intended course and not to change your research agenda every time when you see, oh, this is a very important advice. I have to now to reconsider the topic of my dissertation. So probably decide carefully, make the commitment, and then think how you incorporate what you're advised to do instead of changing the agenda overall.
So spoken like a true student of real options, right?
Yeah.
Have flexibility in how, but not in what, I guess, right? Be committed to what you're doing, but be flexible about how you do it. It sounds
Right.
like. Okay. Well, that's all the questions I've got. So thank you again for being a good sport and sitting for our celebrity talk show ritual. So everybody, please join me in thanking Arkady.
Thank you very much. This is a great pleasure for me to come and to talk to you all.
It's wonderful for us too.